Right now at 11, breaking news. Police are at the scene of a deadly shooting in Exposition Park. This happening along the 4000 block of Dalton Avenue. The call came in just before 10. Officers arrived to find a woman who had been shot. She was pronounced dead at the scene, and so far, no information about a possible suspect. Oh! An out-of-control car and a frightening crash. How did this happen? Good evening, everyone. This is CBS2 News at 11. CBS2's Tina Patel is live in Moreno Valley with more on the crash investigation. Tina.
Well, Pat, amazingly, even though this gym was filled with people at 5 o'clock, no one inside was injured. The manager thinks that's because the woman who works at the front desk heard the commotion going on in the parking lot and had gotten up to see what was going on. Take a listen.
Babe, he's gone from here.
To this park on their cell phones, even though they couldn't get a good. You can hear that screeching from the white car. That's what Ryan and Brandy Bacon heard when they pulled into the parking lot. That's why they started recording on their cell phones. Even though they couldn't get a good look at the driver, they thought he was intentionally trying to run someone over. They didn't expect him to run straight into the gym.
After he pushed the two vehicles out of the way, I thought he came super fast. I thought he was going to make a right here, but then we just seen him come right through the front window here. We thought he was going to come reversing out, but he didn't come reversing out. Then the cops had to come break out the window to get him out.
Now, sheriff's deputies say the driver was taken to the hospital with minor injuries. They do not believe drugs or alcohol are a factor in the crash, but they say it's possible the driver may have been at some sort of medical episode, and that may be why he lost control. Right now, the gym is closed. They evacuated everyone right after the accident. They were worried there might be some structural damage. No word yet on when they may reopen the gym. Live in Moreno Valley, Tina Patel, CBS 2 News.
New tonight, more reports of shots being fired in Malibu Creek State Park. The Sheriff's Department says they have responded twice in the past week. Both instances were in the same area where a father was killed while camping with his daughters last month. However, deputies found no evidence of a shooting in either case. The campground remains closed. A violent home invasion, a family tied up, one person pistol whipped. CBS 2's Rachel Kim is live at the Palmdale Sheriff's Station with the latest on the search for suspects. Rachel.
Pat, right now investigators here at the Palmdale Sheriff's Station are trying to figure out if the victims were followed home. Were they targeted or was this random? Meantime, neighbors are concerned for their safety.
I was shocked to be coming up my street and seeing all these police cars lined up in front of his house and all the yellow tape.
Residents like this man, who didn't want to be identified, came home to this scene in the middle of the afternoon Monday on Erica Lane.
Asked one of the officers, had someone been killed, and he had explained that my neighbor had just been pistol whipped by some intruders.
The Sheriff's Department says around 1:40 this afternoon, they got a 911 call reporting a home invasion. When investigators arrived at the house, they found that the family inside was tied up and robbed of cash and property. This neighbor spoke with a pistol-whipped victim.
He has knots all over his face and cuts and gashes on the back of his head from the pistol whipping and all that. And he's terrified. Yeah, he's terrified.
This neighbor spoke with the victim's relative.
Who he told me was home at the time was the man of the house, his wife, and their infant child.
Neighbors say the victims own several convenience stores in the area. Just a couple of weeks ago on July 2nd, there was another home invasion not far from this house. In that case, the victim is the owner of a Thai restaurant. She was also robbed at her home. Sheriff's investigators tell us it's too early to know if the two cases are connected. Investigators haven't released a description of the suspects or their car, but if you have any information, please give them a call here at the Palmdale Sheriff's Station. Reporting live tonight in Palmdale, Rachel Kim, CBS 2 News.
Well, President Trump facing national outrage from both sides of the aisle as he returns from his summit with Russian President Vladimir Putin. The president complimented his Russian counterpart and dismissed warnings from his own intelligence agencies. CBS2 political reporter Dave Bryan joins us with the late details. Dave?
Pat, as you indicated, the president is taking fire from Democrats and Republicans tonight in what's quickly becoming the most volatile controversy of his administration. In fact, the protests against President Trump's embrace of Vladimir Putin while scorning U.S. intelligence actually reached the streets outside the White House tonight. Demonstrators chanting "traitor" at the White House Monday night as they gathered to protest President Trump's statements at a post-Russia summit news conference with Russian President Vladimir Putin.
I have great confidence in my intelligence people, but I will tell you that President Putin was extremely strong and powerful in his denial today. He just said it's not Russia. I will say this, I don't see any reason why it would be.
The U.S. intelligence agencies overwhelmingly concluded that the Russian government directed cyber attacks on members of the Democratic Party. By day's end, Putin answered another lingering question.
President Putin, did you want President Trump to win the election, and did you direct any of your officials to help him do that?
Yes, I did. Yes, I did.
Reaction from Democrats was swift condemnation.
This is probably, without a doubt, the most shameful and cowardly surrender of American interest in modern history.
Some Republicans were also angry about the president's Russia remarks.
You can't elevate yourself from the level of a snake, and that's where I consider Vladimir Putin.
But not all Republicans feel that way.
Absolutely, I'm with the president on this. And all of this is a sideways way for those on the left to try to delegitimize Trump and to say he didn't really win the election.
Right now, however, it looks like a lot more Republicans viewed the president's remarks very differently. Senator John McCain said it was one of the most disgraceful performances by an American president in memory. And Trump advisor Newt Gingrich called it the most serious mistake of his presidency. Pat, back to you.
All right, thanks for that, Dave. A swarm of bees attacked a woman in Orange County, and tonight she's in critical condition after being stung hundreds of times. Firefighters who tried to help also ended up in the hospital. CBS2 Stacey Butler is live in the Lake Forest neighborhood where those bees attacked. Stacey.
Yeah, Pat, it all happened right here behind me. Neighbors tell me that the bees came out of a gas pipe that was right here on the side of the house against that wall. As soon as they came out, firefighters say thousands swarmed this woman.
It's so horrific. I will never lose the memory of seeing her just swatting at whatever she could.
Cynthia Emmets was walking her dog Ruthie late this morning when she watched in horror as a maid cleaning the house next door was stung by thousands of bees as she stepped outside.
The swarm was approximately at least a foot wide on each side of her head.
Ruthie was stung twice, but the woman was stung about 200 times. The homeowner's son called 911. Minutes later, Orange County Fire Authority crews showed up. They couldn't believe what they saw.
She had probably a few hundred, if not 1,000 bees just embedded into her hair and crawling all over her face.
Without time to suit up to protect themselves, firefighters grabbed the first thing they could, a carbon dioxide extinguisher.
He was spraying this and they were freezing the bees as they were kind of hovering and landing on us.
2 firefighters were taken to the hospital with multiple bee stings.
It just felt like somebody was shooting us with airsoft BBs.
The maid in her 50s, identified as Maria, remains at Saddleback Hospital in critical condition, but she's expected to survive.
I think it's tragic, the poor woman.
Now, the neighbors tell me that they believe that these were Africanized bees. They say that they saw the beekeeper bring 5 buckets filled with honey out of that home. That's the very latest from Lake Forest. Pat, back to you.
Thank you, Stacey. A thief dubbed the Silver Lake Car Elf has struck again. Security video shows a man shining a flashlight into cars. The man who posted that video says the thief broke a Prius window and stole a pillow, which he then ditched down the street. Others report stolen bags filled with business items and electronics. Just last week, video caught him casing more cars. Several people reported broken windows with nothing stolen. Safety first in Beverly Hills. A crackdown is underway for scooter riders breaking laws. Beverly Hills police posted pictures on social media of some of the people who were ticketed or cited over the weekend for not having a driver's license or a helmet. Police say they gave out more than 100 warnings and over 50 citations.
People should wear helmets because I just heard a guy in Starbucks just told me that he's seen a lot of people in the hospital for not wearing helmets.
One rider said the scooter company Bird will send people a helmet if they ask for one. Next at 11, bullets flying, a wild chase and shootout. The dramatic end is caught on camera. The volcano danger in Hawaii is far from over. Tourists hurt when a lava bomb goes flying. And the new way to pay, Venmo may be easy and efficient, but is the app putting some users at risk?
Hi, everybody. I'm Garth Kemp. Here we go again, another round of heat and humidity. We'll tell you about it coming up.
And one of the biggest shopping events of the year, Amazon crashes just as Prime Day begins. And here's a look at the guests tonight on The Late Show with Stephen Colbert.